It's the ultimate act of ego over logic. A head coach so unwilling to admit he might have made the wrong call that he's willing to tank his own offense and cripple the growth of his most promising young player just to prove he's right. That's not coaching. That's self-preservation disguised as strategy. And what makes it so insidious is that the Browns front office seems either blind to it or complicit in it. They're letting this unfold, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of apathy, or perhaps because they too are trying to protect the illusion that their grand plan hasn't completely fallen apart. This isn't the first time we've seen a coach or an organization let their pride outweigh their performance, but what's happening in Cleveland feels different. It feels orchestrated. You can sense the paranoia creeping through every layer of the franchise. From Stefanski's guarded press conferences, to the tight-lipped statements from team PR, to the oddly defensive tone from players forced to field questions about locker room chemistry. It's the behavior of a team that knows something's deeply wrong, but refuses to say it out loud. Because once you admit there's rot in the foundation, you can't pretend the house isn't collapsing anymore. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. The cracks are visible now. You can hear them in the tension-filled sideline exchanges, in the coded comments about sticking to the plan, and in the forced optimism that feels more like a rehearsed PR pitch than genuine belief. The Browns have built a roster full of raw electric talent, but it's being suffocated under the weight of a system designed not to succeed, but to maintain appearances. When a franchise quarterback like Deshaun Watson breaks the unspoken rule of silence and effectively calls out his own coach through a social media like it's not some meaningless click, it's an act of rebellion. The only kind of rebellion that can exist in the tightly controlled ecosystem of the modern NFL. Watson's digital gesture may have been small, but the ripple effect is enormous. It confirmed to players, to fans, and to the wider league that what everyone suspected is true. This isn't about football anymore. It's about control, about ego, about a head coach who's lost the locker room but refuses to let go of the wheel. Stefanski has managed to alienate nearly every quarterback he's coached, and somehow ownership still treats him like an untouchable mastermind. But that illusion is shattering in real time, and Watson's subtle act of defiance may be the final push that sends it all toppling down. The irony is, Stefanski could have avoided this entire fiasco by simply doing his job, by putting his best player on the field and giving his team a real chance to win with style and substance. Instead, he chose to run the ball into the ground, call safe plays, and hide behind defensive dominance like a coward afraid of his own reflection. He's coaching not to lose, but in the process, he's losing everything that matters: the trust of his players, the belief of his fans, and the respect of his peers. It's one thing to be conservative. It's another to be paralyzed by fear of your own roster. And here's the most tragic part. Shedeur Sanders' story is just beginning. He's young, hungry, and undeniably talented. But under Stefanski's watch, he's being forced to sit and rot, his potential gathering dust while lesser quarterbacks stumble their way through uninspired, neutered game plans. If history is any indication, when Shedeur eventually leaves Cleveland, and make no mistake, he'll thrive somewhere else. He'll step into a system that lets him throw deep, move freely, and lead with confidence. And when he does, the Browns will be left wondering why it never worked out, blaming luck, circumstance, or timing, instead of looking inward at the dysfunction they allowed to grow unchecked. That's the thing about this franchise. It's not cursed, despite what fans like to say. It's self-inflicted chaos. For decades, the Browns have been their own worst enemy, hiring, firing, rebuilding, and repeating the same mistakes under different names. The players change, the coaches change, the uniforms get new tweaks, but the core issue remains the same: leadership that can't get out of its own way. And now, in 2025, that same dysfunction has evolved into something even darker. An organization so consumed with protecting its narrative that it's willing to sabotage its own stars to keep the illusion alive. Watson's wasn't just a spark. It was a signal flare. It told everyone watching that even inside the building, the players know the truth. They see the double standards, the political games, the wasted talent. They know that success isn't being stifled by ability, but by arrogance. And once that kind of awareness spreads through a locker room, it's impossible to contain. You can't rebuild trust once players start believing their coach cares more about his image than their careers. So where does Cleveland go from here? That's the million-dollar question. Does ownership finally step in and cut ties with a coach who's clearly lost the room? Or do they double down again, convincing themselves that stability is more important than accountability? The Browns have tried both approaches in the past, chaos and complacency, and neither has worked. The truth is, until they confront the root of the problem, until they prioritize football over optics, until they put winning above ego, this cycle will never end. As for Deshaun Watson, his move may have burned bridges, but it might also be the wake-up call the organization desperately needs. Sometimes change doesn't come from polite meetings or sanitized press releases. It comes from defiance. From someone with enough status and credibility to say, "This isn't right." And if it takes a single tap on a TikTok video to bring the dysfunction of an entire franchise into focus, then maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. The Cleveland Browns are standing at a crossroads. One path leads to yet another rebuild, another wasted season, another chapter in the never-ending book of failure. The other leads to accountability, honesty, and the painful but necessary process of tearing down the lies that have propped up this broken machine for too long. The choice is theirs, but history suggests they'll take the path of denial, just as they always have. And as the rain falls once again over First Energy Stadium, as fans convince themselves that next week will be different, you can't help but wonder, how many more careers will be buried in Cleveland before someone finally tells the truth out loud? If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. Do you think Deshaun Watson crossed a line, or did he finally say what needed to be said? Is Kevin Stefanski truly the problem, or is this just another case of the Browns being the Browns? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're tired of watching talented players wasted by bad leadership. Subscribe for more deep dives into the stories the NFL doesn't want you to hear, because this, right here, is only the beginning.